So my name is Jessica Paholsky. I am the author of Once Upon a Pesto, which is a exploration of different cultures and locations around the world through the lens of pesto, which is presented as a process because the word it traces its roots to an Italian verb that means to crush or to grind. And so that process then serves as the way that different ingredients are used and then applied as a pesto in internationally inspired dishes. The concept really stemmed from my background in education, in working at a teen travel company, having lived and studied in different places abroad, including in Europe and Mexico. And all of that just really contributed to my passion of sharing this with other people and encouraging them to step outside of their, home through what can be done in the kitchen, in their own kitchen, without having to have a passport, a suitcase packed, or any kind of flight ticket. So all of that is, done in a tone that's whimsical, childlike. This idea, once upon a pesto, alludes to a fairy tale, and so I wanted it to be that kind of an approach to learning and exploring.
And what kind of audiences are you hoping to reach through this book? How do you think it's
Sure.
going to impact them?
The audiences this book is set to, educate is anyone who really just wants to explore, whether it is food related recipes or exploring other parts of the world. A lot of times, our schedules limit us from the ability to travel, but that isn't the case when you can do it through cooking and reading. And so people who love to travel, who have the travel bug but are limited in some form or fashion. People who want to try different ingredients, they kind of get stuck in a rut. This book covers so many different ingredients, some that, for me, when I was developing these recipes, were the first time I ever tried these ingredients. And I think a lot of people will find value in the variety of recipes that are here and also the ability to explore different cultures through those internationally inspired recipes. I know a lot of generations, age ranges, there's an interest in the world around us and in trying new and interesting foods. And so I hope that, every generation does have an interest in this and can learn something from at least one recipe or one story that's shared in there.
I do love, I will say, the way I'm just going to change up a little format thing to just have a little
Yeah.
variety. Um, I love your book because I think that is such a good point. Like the cost of being able to travel and try those other foods, have those experiences, that's kind of elite nowadays. I mean, at
Mhm.
least for me anyway. Like I know I think I am gonna purchase it just because
Thank you.
I love that concept, Jessica. It's really so cool.
Thank
Um
you.
and it's a great niche too. Um but I was gonna ask when did the process start for you exactly? Like how long ago was it when you're like, "Oh, I have this concept and this idea." And how did that evolve? Because I know there's a lot of recipes, a lot that went into this. So how was
Yeah.
that journey and process?
Yeah, my journey with the cookbook from its inception didn't start with the concept. I actually set the goal of a cookbook before I determined what that cookbook would be. So in 2016, I started working, after working in a teen travel company, I started working at a publishing company, which was the current publisher of Men's Health Magazine, Women's Health Magazine, Runner's World. All of those were under this parent publishing company, and which the magazines and the titles have all been sold to another publishing company. But when I was there at the time, I said, I'm in this network and have access to these resources. I want to publish a book because I thought that would be so cool. I grew up loving writing and photography and just the idea of storytelling was part of my career. So I wanted to take it outside in this passion project. And so once I determined, okay, a book. I landed on the cookbook, and then I wanted to make sure that the cookbook would fit into a niche, something that's not already on the shelves out there, that had some relation to people's interests, but also to what I could bring from my own personal experiences. And so when I looked into what I had accomplished through college in doing a mini documentary for my honors thesis about olive oil. And having studied abroad in Italy and learned Italian, that led me to pesto and researching that pesto comes from this Italian verb that means to crush or to grind. And from there, that concept then allowed me to develop the recipes over the course of the next about 2 years. So most weekends I would work Friday writing a recipe. I used a book called the Flavor Bible to help me guide me which ingredients would support, the centerpiece ingredient. And then once I had the pesto, look into that culture and what recipes I could incorporate that pesto into. So once I wrote the recipes, then I would go out, buy all the ingredients on the weekend, make the recipes, photograph them, and over the course of those 2 years, created about 50 that I then narrowed down to the 40 that are part of the book. And from there, it was writing all the commentary that supports these recipes. And so it was a multi-year process and building up my social following to support the eventual launch of a book.
Sorry, I had a vacuum come through, so I thought I'd just mute myself in case. I'm in my apartment at the moment. Um, that's really cool. And I'm
Thank
assuming
you.
like you have grown up or your whole family like probably has a lot of passion around cooking. Like, was it something you grew up doing with your family? That
It
kind of thing?
It's not like we were all in the kitchen together. My mom was very much modeling a sustainable lifestyle with having a garden, having fresh herbs at hand, growing in the backyard, and the recipes that she often would make. I think were things that she grew up having and very, very delicious meals, but I want to say they were limited in terms of the scope, in terms of international representation. And that's to no fault. There's no requirement of that. But I think it was once I started traveling the world. And I remember in college, I would come home and, help her with cooking some stuff and start doing my own things. And she's like, what are you doing? And I never thought about that. And she kind of like grew to look to me for new ideas because years after years cooking for the family, that was, just not like staying in a comfort zone, but she knew what she did well and she wanted to do that. And so I think that back and forth, me learning from her with doing the home cooking, things from scratch, and then her learning from me and trying to like expand the flavors and foods that she was using in the cooking. So all of that, yeah, definitely had a role in the idea behind this and exploring new ingredients, trying to make things that are, essentially from scratch. You don't have to have the prepackaged things if you have the available ingredients.
Definitely. Totally agree. Do you have like a favorite part of the process that you went through, like through this whole journey? What was like the most exciting? Was it getting the book in your hand for the first time? Was it like getting the cover finalized or like all the pages, like the format? Like, what was your favorite part about the whole process?
It's hard to pick one part of the process that would be my top favorite because it's been a learning journey from the very beginning, just how all this work goes into it. Every detail that people will see on each page of the book, there was thought behind that. And if I had to narrow it down to two, it would be the coming together of all of my content, the photos. I had a folder of photos and I had a Word document that's dozens of pages long, but to see those come together in a digital graphic design that then translated into something print and something that you can page through was just unmatched in terms of any other experience or feeling that I've had. I've always been an advocate for non-digital books. Kindles are great, but I love the tangibility of pages. And so to see my own work in that format was really, really neat.
It is really exciting. Um, is there any particular part of the book, uh, or any particular recipe that you're like really excited for people to see or enjoy, or like what are you looking most forward to?
I think the part that people are going to be surprised with is The book is sectioned into four parts geographically. So, four regions of the world: the Americas, Europe, Asia, and then Africa and the islands. And I think a lot of people, when they think about foreign cuisines, the big ones come to mind, Italy, France, you might have Spain in there, China, Japan, India. All of those countries do find their place in my book, but other countries that are completely off the, I'll call it culinary grid, are represented, and you can discover, their food is just as interesting, delicious, and unique as these famous culinary, idols of the world.
So cool. That. Um, do you have any like I know you're releasing a book, which is a whole like accomplishment, huge accomplishment in itself. Not to like jump the gun, but do you have anything you're really excited to or looking forward to with like Once Upon a Pesto for like the future or already planning different things around it? You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. So right now, this, I'll call it first edition of Once Upon a Pesto, has four sections. Each section has 10 recipes. So a total of, or sorry, each section has 10 locations represented in it, and each location has three recipes. So total book has 40 different places represented and 120 recipes. My hope and goal is that this is the first edition. A second edition will also include 40 countries or cultures that aren't represented in the first one in the same format, sectioned by those four regions. After that, I would love to see this turned into a children's book or a children's edition, really focusing in going back to that idea behind the title Once Upon a Pesto and fairy tale and just education and bringing kids up in this idea of at-home cooking and learning about the world around them. So those are the big things on the horizon that I could see coming to fruition with a lot more time, obviously invested in developing the recipes and all the parts and pieces that came together to make the first.
I love that. And going back to that like element of whimsy and kind of like fairy tale vibe to it, like what kind of made you think like I don't want it to be a standard cookbook, but I want this to be kind of the feeling that people get while reading it?
It kind of all came about once I determined the title. Once Upon a Pesto, when I landed on that, I liked the repetition of the P's and just how it flowed off the mouth. I then discovered there's a lot of other, companies or brands out there that use the once upon a, fill in the blank. And that was an after discovery, after coming up with mine. But, the Once Upon a Pesto presenting itself as that fairy tale. I think a lot of us have different childhood experiences that helped shape who we are today and helped us develop our interests. And so that same feeling, nostalgia, I wanted to translate into the pages of the book. And while traditional cookbooks have, beautiful imagery and really tasty recipes, there was something else that I wanted to contribute with my background, the experiences I had abroad, my career and professional background in storytelling, and putting that all into something that sets it apart from any other cookbook.
Is there, that was great, thank you. Is there anything that you really wanted to kind of share or anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't like discussed yet?
I think just, I mean, we covered it in some capacity, but one thing, just going back to the very basic concept for the book, um, the misunderstanding. A lot of people will say, "Oh, pesto, I've made pesto or I've had pesto." It's that basil sauce that has Parmesan and pine nuts, and I had it on pasta. And that narrow-mindedness is exactly what this book is helping to break down, those walls and that assumption that pesto is just one thing. And when you look beyond that type of pesto, which by no means is less deserving of its recognition, there's so much more. And the research and learnings that I did that went into this book are just mind-blowing when you think about Italy alone. They have pestos that are seen throughout the country, and the country's, rather small, but for the country of that size to have multiple pestos, for people to understand that, I think is just the starting point to the opportunity. And knowing that, pesto is one part, but then um, the ingredients that make it up is the whole other side of the story.